Welcome everyone. Today is the first day of our 8-module online credit course on laws related to human trafficking. Today's session is Introduction to Human Trafficking. We will try to keep the session within 40 minutes. Now, I will inform you on 2 things. First, please put your question in the question answer box if you have any. And second is, at the end of each session, you will get a link in the chat box where you will get a feedback form, which you need to fill up in order to get the certificate, I mean the e-certificate at the end of the credit course. Now, let us join together to call upon our today's guest lecturer, Professor Prem Kumar Agarwal. So Professor Prem Kumar Agarwal, he is the former judge under the judicature of Honorable High Court at Calcutta and founder faculty of West Bengal National University of Judicial Science, editor-in-chief of Global Journal of Juridical Sciences. He is also visiting faculty and tenure at the National Judicial Academy of the Honorable Supreme Court of India, West Bengal Judicial Academy of the Honorable Calcutta High Court, Administrative Academy, and Police Academy. And there are so many things which we can talk about, Prem sir. It is huge things. So let us, we wanted to keep this short. So let us call upon Professor Prem Kumar Agarwal. Sir, now it is to you. I will request Prem Kumar sir to switch on the video.
Okay. Am I audible?
Yes, sir, you are audible.
And visible too. Am I visible?
Yes, you are visible, sir.
Okay, I am sharing the screen.
So before you start, I'm Dr. Shubhalakshmi Mukherjee. I welcome you on behalf of Kolkata Police Law Academy, Law Institution. Sir, it's great pleasure to hear you. As always, you are a great speaker.
Thank you, Shubhalakshmi. Thank you so much. Nice to hear you. Nice to see you.
Thank you, sir.
Am I audible? Is my screen visible now?
Yeah, you are visible, sir. And audible.
And my screen is visible?
No,
Yes,
your screen is not visible.
No, I can see you, but you have to share the screen, sir.
Yes. Is it visible now? Is it visible now?
Yes, sir. It is visible now.
Okay.
Yes, sir.
So I am audible now, properly, clearly audible?
Yes, sir.
Oh, thank you, International Justice Mission and Kolkata Police Law Institute. Thank you, Piyali and Shubhalakshmi, for your generous introductions. Now,
you.
today we will have a brief introduction to human trafficking. Now, I have put my thoughts in a few slides. I'll try to discuss whatever is written in the slides with you, and at the end of the talk, we'll have some interaction. Because one way talking is never, very happy experience. So we would like to have a both way interaction. So thoughts on human trafficking. As simply as we are humans, we enjoy human rights. Now, I thought of beginning this talk on human trafficking or a discuss on human trafficking with human rights. Why? Human rights is a term used for the compendium of all those inalienable, inevitable entitlements without which an entity cannot live as a human being. And human trafficking is a heinous crime which simply strikes at the root of those entitlements. So it is a gross violation of human rights. So human trafficking is one of the serious and heinous crime prevalent in the society since time immemorial, which absolutely deprive the enjoyment of basic human inalienable rights. The most significant basic right of humans, that is right to life and personal liberty, is at stake while crime like human trafficking is prevailing. Human trafficking is against the concept of rule of law. Human trafficking is not a crime against the individual, but it's a crime against the society at large. Now, according to UNODC, the United Nations organization, human trafficking is the recruitment, transportation, transfer, harboring, or receipt of people through force, fraud, or deception with the aim of exploiting them for profit. Men, women, and children of all ages and from all backgrounds can become victims of this crime, which occurs in every region of the world. The traffickers often use violence or fraudulent employment agencies and fake promises of education and job opportunities to trick and coerce their victims. Now, let us see the various forms of human trafficking. There are different kinds of trafficking. However, the most common are the following: forced labor, bonded labor, forced marriage, sex trafficking, child labor, domestic servitude. Now, out of these, 50% human trafficking is in the form of sexual exploitation and 38% is in the form of forced labor. So 98% of human trafficking account this out of 98 out of the different kinds of human trafficking, 98% accounts for sexual exploitation and forced labor. Other forms, criminal activity, begging, forced marriages, other mixed forms, babysitting, removal of organs, and others unknown forms are there. So all these are UN data. Now, shares of forms of exploitation among detected women victims of trafficking in persons in 2018, 106 countries, 12,162 victims whose age, sex, and form of exploitation was reported. 77% trafficking for sexual exploitation, 14% trafficking for forced labor, 9% trafficking for other forms of exploitation. Shares of forms of exploitation among detected men victims of trafficking in persons. 106 countries, 3,762 victims whose age, sex, and form of exploitation was reported. 17% traffic for sexual exploitation, 67% trafficking for forced labor, 1% trafficking for organ removal, and 15% trafficking for other forms of exploitation. Now, shares of forms of exploitation among detected girl victims of trafficking in person, 106 countries, 4,863 victims whose age, sex, and form of exploitation was reported. 72% trafficking for sexual exploitation, for forced 21% trafficking for forced labor, 7% trafficking for other forms of exploitation. Now, shares of forms of exploitation among detected by victims of trafficking in persons, 106 countries, 23% trafficking for sexual exploitation, 66% trafficking for forced labor, and 11% trafficking for other forms of exploitation. Now, reason triggered for human trafficking: poverty and unemployment, lack of education, demand for cheap labor, lack of human rights coupled with unawareness of the vulnerable sects, lack of human rights awareness, lack of legitimate economic opportunities, social factors and cultural practices, lack of safe custody of immigrants, business behind the trafficking, lack of awareness in the cyber world, lacks in enforcement of law. Now, trafficker structure. Individual traffickers typically operate on their own. Business enterprise type of organized criminal groups. Opportunistic association of traffickers. Two traffickers operating together or more than two traffickers not systematically working together beyond a single crime episode. Governance type of organized criminal groups. Practice security governance in a community of territory by means of fear and violence, and may involve in multiple illicit markets. Business models for trafficking in persons. Same traffickers recruiting and exploiting the victims. Traffickers recruiting victims in connection with different traffickers exploiting them. Traffickers recruiting victims, different traffickers exploiting them, and others connecting the two. So I am sharing all these data to highlight the magnitude of the problem of the crime. Now, the international instruments on human trafficking. The United Nations Convention Against Transnational Organized Crime 2000 is a very important international instrument. The convention represents a major step forward in the fight against transnational organized crime and signifies the need to foster and enhance close international cooperation in order to tackle those problems. States that ratify this instrument commit themselves to taking a series of measures against transnational organized crime, including the creation of domestic criminal offenses, participation in an organized crime group, money laundering, corruption, and obstruction of justice, the adoption of new and sweeping frameworks for extradition, mutual legal assistance, and law enforcement cooperation, and the promotion of training and technical assistance for building or upgrading the necessary capacity of national authorities. The convention is further supplemented by 3 protocols which target specific areas and manifestations of organized crimes. They are namely the protocol to prevent, suppress and punish trafficking in persons, especially women and children. The protocol against the smuggling of migrants by land, sea and air. And the protocol against the illicit manufacturing of and trafficking in firearms, their parts and components and ammunitions. We all know that in international legal system, in order to enforce a convention or a treaty or treaty obligation, there are certain multilateral treaty obligations, there are certain protocols which are created, and the signatories of the protocol, they implement the international obligations through the protocols. Protocol to prevent, suppress and punish trafficking in persons, especially women and children, Palermo Protocol 2000. It is the first global legally binding instrument with an agreed definition on trafficking in persons. Articles 5 and 6 of the protocol require states to criminalize trafficking, attempted trafficking, and any other intentional participation or organization in a trafficking scheme, and to protect and assist the victims respectively. The protocol against the smuggling of migrants by land, sea and air. A major achievement of the protocol was that for the first time in a global international instrument, a definition of smuggling of migrants was developed and agreed upon. The protocol against the illicit manufacturing of and trafficking in firearms, parts and components and ammunitions. It is the first legally binding instrument on all small arms that has been adopted at the global level, is to promote, facilitate and strengthen cooperation among state parties in order to prevent, combat and eradicate the illicit manufacturing of and trafficking in firearms, their parts and components and ammunition. In May 2011, the Indian government ratified 2 UN conventions, the United Nations Conventions Against Corruption and the United Nations Conventions Against Transnational Crime and its 3 protocols. So we are also a signatory to these protocols. Few more international instruments. Since trafficking includes forced labor also, so these are also the relevant international instruments. The ILO or International Labour Organization, Forced Labor Convention, Convention 29 of 1930 and its protocol. The ILO Abolition of Forced Labor Convention, Convention 105 of 1957. The Slavery Convention 1926. The United Nations Convention for the Suppression of the Traffic in Persons and of the Exploitation of the Prostitution of Others 1949. UDHR, Universal Declaration of Human Rights 1948. The International Covenant on Civil and Political Rights 1966. The Convention on the Elimination of All Forms of Discrimination Against Women 1979, which we call CEDAW. The Convention on the Rights of the Child 1989 and the Optional Protocol on the Sale of Children, Child Prostitution and Child Pornography 2000. Now let us come to the Indian legislations or legislative scheme. Start with the Constitution. Human trafficking is against the objectives and purpose enshrined in the preamble of the Constitution of India. Because the preamble starts with we, the people of India. So all the entitlements in the Constitution belongs to we, all human beings, all Indians, and some of the entitlements in the Constitution in Part 3 even belong to non-citizens also. So Part 3 of our Constitution talks about fundamental rights, which are in conformity with international instruments. Article 23 and 24 explicitly prohibits human trafficking and child labor. According to Article 23, prohibition of traffic in human beings and forced labor, traffic in human beings and begar, and other similar forms of forced labor are prohibited, and any contravention of this provision shall be an offense punishable in accordance with law. Nothing in this article shall prevent the state from imposing compulsory service for public purposes, and in imposing such service, the state shall not make any discrimination on grounds only of religion, race, caste, or class, or any of them. Article 24 lays down prohibition of employment of children in factories, etc. No child below the age of 14 years shall be employed to work in any factory or mine or engaged in any other hazardous employment. Moreover, any step towards any kind of human trafficking is the violation of the most significant right, that is Article 21, which I call the soul of the Indian Constitution, which is right to life. No person shall be deprived of his life or personal liberty except according to procedure established by law. Apart from the Constitution, we have the Indian Penal Code. Now, Indian Penal Code has section 370 directly on human trafficking. Before the amendment of the IPC in 2013, section 370 was as follows: whoever imports, exports, removes, buys, sells, or disposes of any person as a slave, or accepts, receives, or detains against his will any person as a slave, shall be punished with imprisonment of either description for a term which may extend to 7 years and shall also be liable to fine. From the language of section 370 before amendment, it is clear that the jurisprudential rationale was in tune with abolition of slavery, which was a menace. You know, at the time when the Indian Penal Code in 1872 or at that time in the 19th century, when Macaulay drafted it, it was a great menace, and primarily the focus was on slavery. But by the 2013 amendment, we have a new or newly incorporated section 370, which is whoever for the purpose of exploitation recruits, transfers, harbors, transfers, or receives a person or persons by using threat, using force, or any other form of coercion, or by abduction, or by practicing fraud or deception, or by abuse of power, or by inducement, including the giving or receiving of payments or benefits in order to achieve the consent of any person having control over the person recruited, transported, harbored, transferred, or received, commits the offense of trafficking. So the form of human trafficking has now changed, and so the law has also to be changed, and we have the changed law. Now, the magnitude of inhumanity is proportionate with the degree of punishment. The offense of trafficking, you can see rigorous punishment for a term which shall not be less than 7 years, but which may extend to 10 years and also liable to fine. Trafficking of more than one person, a term which shall not be less than 10 years, but which may extend to imprisonment for life and shall also be liable to fine. Rigorous imprisonment for a term which shall not be less than 10 years. See, less than 10 years, less than 14 years, all these have been included by the 2013 Amendment Act. Another significant legal provision has been included in IPC, which is section 370A, which protects the trafficked person from being exploited. It specifically includes both child and person. The punishment of crime against the child is 5 to 7 years with fine, and for person it is 2 to 5 years with fine. There are various provisions in IPC which penalize different forms of human trafficking apart from section 370 and 370A. 366 deals with kidnapping, abducting, or inducing women to compel her marriage, etc. Section 366A, procuration of minor girl. Section 366B, importation of girl from foreign country. Section 367, kidnapping or abducting in order to subject person to grievous hurt, slavery, etc. Section 371, habitual dealing in slaves. Section 372, selling minor for purposes of prostitution, etc. Section 373, buying minor for purposes of prostitution, etc. Section 374, unlawful compulsory labor. Now, Apart from IPC, we have Immoral Traffic Prevention Act 1956. Now, this piece of legislation was the result of the ratification of the United Nations International Convention for the Suppression of Women in Traffic in Persons and the Exploitation in Others by India in 1950. Previously, it was known in the nomenclature of the Suppression of Immoral Traffic in Women and Children Act 1956. Surprisingly, the Act does not make prostitution illegal per se, but it makes keeping and using of premises as brothel, living on the income earned via prostitution, pimping, soliciting, seducing a person for prostitution in custody or otherwise, and prostitution in a public area, etc., as offense punishable under the Act. A brothel includes any house or any portion of any house, room or any portion of any room, conveyance or portion of any conveyance, place or portion of any place, for purpose of sexual exploitation or abuse for the gain of another person or for the mutual gain of two or more prostitutes. For making it an offense, it is obvious to prove that there was commercial exploitation or abuse, because if prostitution is done independently or voluntarily, then it won't constitute an offense under this Act. We all know that. Now, apart from the IPC, the Moral Traffic Act, we have other enactments also which touch upon human trafficking. POCSO 2012 Act, which has come into effect from 14 November 2012, is a special law to protect children from sexual abuse and exploitation. It provides precise definitions for different forms of sexual abuse, including penetrative, non-penetrative, sexual assault, sexual harassment, etc. There are other specific legislations enacted relating to trafficking in women and children: Prohibition of Child Marriage Act 2006, Bonded Labor Systems Abolition Act 1976, Child Labor Prohibition and Regulation Act 1986, Transportation of Human Organs Act 1994, Juvenile Justice Act 2017, Information Technology Act 2000. So there is no dearth of laws, as we see. We have plenty of laws touching human trafficking, but where are we? Are we implementing the laws properly, or we need more laws? Are the existing laws enough? Let us try and see. The Indian judiciary against human trafficking. There are innumerable Supreme Court cases which condemn this horrific crime and tries to set guidelines where necessary. Some landmark instances are given below. People's Union for Democratic Rights versus Union of India, 1982, 3 Supreme Court cases, 234. Explain forced labor. Any factor which deprives a person of a choice of alternatives and compels him to adopt one particular course of action may properly be regarded as force. And if labor or service is compelled as a result of such force, it would be forced labor. But just imagine the economic condition of the poor of this country. Do they have the luxury of choice to deny a particular kind of employment, even if they are exploited by the employer? Think of the daily laborers. I don't think they have a choice. So we have to strike at the root cause for all this is poverty or economic underdevelopment. Human trafficking and bonded labor case, Bandhua Mukti Morcha versus Union of India, the celebrated case. The rehabilitation of the released bonded laborers is a question of great importance, because if the bonded laborers who are identified and freed are not rehabilitated, their condition would be much worse than what it was before during the period of their serfdom, and they would become more exposed to exploitation and slide back once again into serfdom, even in the absence of any coercion. The bonded laborer who is released would prefer slavery to hunger. This is very important. Slavery is preferable to hunger or dying of starvation. A world of bondage and illusory security as against a world of freedom and starvation. This was the observation of our apex court in this celebrated case, that bondage and illusory security as against world of freedom and starvation. Who would prefer starving to death to slavery? In Gaurav Jain versus Union of India, the Honorable Supreme Court ordered for constituting a committee on the prostitution, child prostitutes, and plan of action to combat trafficking and commercial and sexual exploitation of women and children to check the ground realities. In Buddhadev Kormakar versus State of West Bengal in 2011, the Supreme Court stated that from a perusal of the Ujjwala scheme, it appears that the central government has a scheme only for rescued trafficked women, but no scheme for those sex workers who voluntarily want to leave the sex trade. In our opinion, proper effective schemes should be prepared for such women also. Moreover, the court also appointed a panel of NGO activists and lawyers to study, research, and suggest a scheme in terms of prevention of trafficking, rehabilitation of sex workers who wish to leave sex work, and conditions conducive for sex workers who wish to continue working as sex workers with dignity. Now, in spite of having all these arrangements, the saddest part is, according to UNODC, number of detected victims reported in 2018 is 49,032. According to UNODC report, India stands in third position in South Asia region as far as offense of trafficking is concerned. The Department of Justice ranks each country in trafficking in person report on one of 4 tiers. You know, there are 4 tiers: tier 1, tier 2, tier 3, and tier 4. The Department of Justice of the US, they publish this report every year, and India stands in tier 2 in 2021 as well as 2020 in the number of human trafficking areas compared to the population. And that report highlights, in case of India, bonded labor as a serious problem in India. And the tier 3 countries is very interesting to note. China, Russia, all these are in tier 3 countries, although they claim themselves to be developed countries, but their trafficking, human trafficking, is a sort of patronized by the state. Certain tribes in China, Kazakhs and other Hun tribes, they are sort of trafficked for, to work at a meager wage. So there they are placed in the tier 3. And the Western European countries, US, Canada, they are tier 1 countries. Around 5,000 people are trafficked each year. In 2018, the eastern state of Jharkhand posted the highest number of cases of trafficking, while the western state of Maharashtra ranked second. The National Crime Records Bureau, NCRB, issued its 2020 Crime in India report. In 2020, the government reported 1,714 trafficking cases under the IPC, compared with 2,088 cases in 2019, 1,830 trafficking cases in 2018, and 2,854 trafficking cases in 2017. According to a report by Free a Girl Foundation, around 700 to 800 children are stuck in brothel areas of Nagpur, in the red light area of Nagpur in India. According to a study by Reuters, out of an estimated 20 million commercial prostitution in India, 16 million women and girls are victims of sex trafficking. According to legal services in India, every hour 4 girls in India enter into prostitution, 3 of them against their will. Just think the appalling condition. 1/3 of those accused of human trafficking in nearly 200 cases in West Bengal and Andhra Pradesh are women. According to NCRB, West Bengal reported 120, 172, and 59 cases in human trafficking in the year 2018, 2019, and 2020 respectively. In 2019, the government completed prosecution in 600 trafficking cases, convicted 306 traffickers in 160 cases, and acquitted 1,329 suspects in 440 cases. The acquittal rate for trafficking cases was 73% in 2019. While the ILO, International Labour Organization, says out of 1,000 persons, 5.4 persons are victimized. The data of NCRB says out of 1.3 billion populations, only 4,709 have been victimized. This is a huge mismatch to the projected magnitude of human trafficking. Now, COVID-19 has changed the world and for the worse for human trafficking. As I told you, the real reason of trafficking is economics. It is not a law and order problem, it is more of an economic problem. And COVID-19 has impoverished the lower strata of the society the most, as poverty and unemployment are most compelling reason for human trafficking. During the peak time of COVID-19, the increased rate of human trafficking is obvious. People are willing to work for whatever they are paid. Such was the condition. However, the tragedy is most of the cases remain unregistered. They are not reported as yet. During the pandemic, people lost their jobs, lost their earning member, which worsened the scenario. In 2019, the Global Multi-Dimensional Poverty Index reported that India lifted 271 million citizens out of poverty between 2006 and 2016. Contrast this with the situation in 2020. The highest global poverty increase happened in India. Why? Because of COVID-19. However, the good news is poverty rate in India will ease in financial year 2022, but will still remain closer to 10% levels according to the World Bank. All the factors result into more forced labor, forced marriage, sexual exploitation, and rampant trafficking. Now, this COVID-19 created a demand for, these obscene material on the net, and that also led to an increase in trafficking cases through the internet, through the apps, through the electronic media. Now let us try and connect the gaps way forward. Where human trafficking starts, human rights end. It is high time to rethink about the whole scenario in totality. In the international and national, there are enough laws to eliminate this brutality, but law somewhere lacks. Law has the power to deter people, to bind them. But if some bigger fear, for instance, poverty, overpower the law, the whole legislation will be futile. As I told you, people would prefer Section 370 IPC does not include, the amendment bill was lapsed, which contained such provision. A new anti-trafficking bill was approved by the lower house in 2018, a specific anti-trafficking bill waiting for approval of the upper house. This bill extends the protection to the transgender also, but it does not extend the relief beyond shelter homes.
I think there is some issue with Prem's internet. So just give us some time to fix this. We'll be right back with Prem's.
Hello?
Hello.
Hello?
Yes, sir, we
Hello.
can
Am I
hear you.
audible?
Yeah, you are
Yes,
audible.
yes.
Yes, sir,
Am I
you are
audible
audible.
now?
Yes, you're audible.
Oh, up to which slide did I?
It was, sir, COVID-19, like during the
Oh,
COVID-19.
after COVID-19, the connection was off.
Yes, yes.
Okay.
I'm just giving you the exact slide number, sir. Yeah, it was you. We were in slide number 26.
My goodness. After that, I was just 27. So
Yeah, we just completed till 26. Slide number 26.
okay. So according to a report by Free a Girl Foundation, am I audible now? Hello?
Yes, sir, you are audible. Are you sharing the screen, sir?
Yes, I'm sharing the screen.
Okay, so it is not
Okay,
coming.
let me just check. Let me just 1 second. Yeah, now it will come. Is it visible now? Is it visible now?
Yes, sir, visible.
Yes, sir.
Your screen is
Yes.
visible.
So, okay. So according to a report by Free a Girl Foundation, around 700 to 800 girls are stuck in the red light area of Nagpur, India. According to a study by Reuters, out of estimated 20 million commercial prostitutes in India, 16 million women and girls are victims of sex trafficking. According to Legal Services India, every hour, 4 girls in India enter into prostitution, 3 of them against their will. Am I audible now? I'm audible. Hello?
Yes, sir, you are audible, sir.
Yes. 1/3 of those accused of human trafficking in nearly 200 cases in West Bengal and Andhra Pradesh are women. Mind you. So women are accused of human trafficking. According to NCRB, West Bengal reported 120, 172, 59 cases in human trafficking in the year 2018, 2019, 2020 respectively. In 2019, the government completed prosecution in 600 trafficking cases, convicted 306 traffickers in 160 cases, and acquitted 1,329 suspects in 440 cases. The acquittal rate for trafficking cases was 73% in 2019.
Sir, just to, yes, I think we have completed this. We were actually talking about the impact of COVID-19 in human trafficking.
Yes, impact. Okay. So the way ahead we were discussing.
Yes.
Okay, where human trafficking starts, human rights end. It is high time to rethink of the whole scenario in totality. International, national, there are enough laws to eliminate this brutality, but law somewhere lacks. You know, the fear of starvation, it is the major problem. So it is more of economic than of law and order problem. However, there is a lacuna in existing legal regime. Section 370 IPC does not include exploitation in any other field except sexual orientation. Now, there was an amendment sought in 2015 which lapsed. A new anti-trafficking bill was approved by the lower house in 2019, waiting for approval of the upper house. The bill extends the protection to the transgenders also. but it does not extend the relief beyond shelter homes. Now, regarding this bill, the UN has a response. The proposed bill seems to promote rescue raids by the police and the institutionalization of victims in the name of rehabilitation, rather than applying appropriate screening methods and standard operating procedures for the identification and referral of victims or potential victims of trafficking and social integration programs which are respectful of their origin. Furthermore, it was added, trafficking in persons is primarily a gross human rights violation. However, the bill overemphasizes the criminal response and does not give due consideration to the rights and needs of victims and their effective protection and proper rehabilitation. Government is busy to strengthen the law, but questions arise regarding the enforcement, the complexity of the court proceedings. Although there are many NGOs working for the rescue of trafficked persons, the actual problem arises in social acceptance. While reformation and rehabilitation is needed, the socio-cultural perspective should be changed. The government should provide with some economic stability, otherwise rehabilitation alone can't do much. It is pertinent to note here that NGO analysis of historical government crime data showed that among 38,503 trafficking victims identified between 2010 and 2018, judges only proactively awarded compensation. This is for my judge friends, to 102, less than 1%. Although there have been some minor improvements in compensation in some recent years. However, during 2020, the District Legal Services Authority, DLSA in Kolkata, awarded 8,76,410 INR, that is $12,000 to a survivor of human trafficking, the highest compensation awarded by DLSA in West Bengal. The Ministry of Home Affairs has sanctioned a comprehensive scheme strengthening law enforcement response. Law enforcement response in India against trafficking in persons, through training and capacity building, wherein it is proposed to establish 330 anti-human trafficking units. This was actually the policy of the central government, and the Ministry of Home was supposed to establish 330 of such AHTUs, but as we are told, only 225 have been reported till date, but no data is there regarding their activity. So that is the end of much of the boring material I bombarded your brains with. But then, which is the way forward? What is the solution to all this? So we have enough laws, but what is required is the political will to combat such a heinous crime. A crime not only against the victims, but against the society, against the human race. Now, where are we going wrong? What are the problems? Lack of proper investigation, the delay in court proceedings. These are some of the reasons. So what should we do to improve the situation? At the first, we have to create awareness. So educating the youngsters at the school level, high school level, regarding the problem. Implementation of the laws properly with strong political will. Proper and fast investigation. Setting up fast-track courts. And last but not the least, proper meaningful rehabilitation of the victims' rescue. These are some of the areas on which we have to think upon. So I think I should end here and allow you to talk. So any questions, any inputs, any suggestions, most welcome.
Thank you, sir. Sir, if you can stop the screen sharing.
Sharing. Okay.
So
Yes.
before I go with the question answer session, sir, I just want to inform the participants that if you can see in the chat box, we have given a link. That is the link for the feedback form that you have to fill up in order to get the e-certificate. So in every session, in every week, you will get this link where you have to fill up to in order to get the e-certificate. So, sir, to you, thank you. Like it was very informative, and the comparison that you just showed here, it was really like we are getting so much important data right now. So, sir, just I have few questions that has come up. So one is first is, sir, we have seen that in different form of human trafficking, sex trafficking, like trafficking for the sexual exploitation, it is a huge number. Then it is coming the bonded labor, then the child labor, and I just want to know about the organ trading. Human trafficking in aspect of organ trading, because if you see in COVID-19, this issue has come up, like the dead bodies were being were not given to the guardian or to the
Relatives.
people, yes, to the relatives, and there this issue suddenly came up during this COVID-19 situation. So if you can just throw some light on this organ trading, sir.
Yes, Organ Transplantation Act we already have, and there are very strict measures also. But again, having a law is not enough. The problem is implementation of the law. And this harvesting organs or transportation or taking away organs from human bodies, or trafficking people for organs also comes under human trafficking. But having the law is one thing, and effective implementation of the law is another thing. As I told you, that is in India a distant dream, not only for this, for all laws.
Yes. So, sir, there is another question which I would like to ask you. So, during this COVID situation, what we saw that we, rather than using the physical one, we actually transferred to the virtual thing. Like on mostly we do the classes and the webinars and so many things on virtual. So somehow this has come, this has affected somehow to the children also. So I just wanted to know, like, how does lack of awareness in this cyber world, how it has triggered the human trafficking?
Yes. See, since we were forced to be indoors, people had plenty of time, number one. Number two, people explored the online opportunities or online facilities much more. And that gave a fillip to what is known as online obscene things. So that was another way of, impetus to this, this obscene videos being made, the children being trafficked for that. So that is there. And COVID-19 actually changed the world. It made topsy-turvy. There were certain things which, from the environmental point of view, the earth got cleansed, but then there were certain pitfalls also. And one of the worst effects of COVID-19 is this online material, the demand for online material, it suited up. And that's why this trafficking in or sex trafficking through obscene videos, obscene material, it became much more.
Yeah. So, and there is another question, sir. As we just saw that as per UNDOC report, India stands third in the South Asia region. So my question is, what is the global ranking of the human trafficking as an organized crime?
Global ranking of human trafficking as an organized crime?
Yes, sir.
It should be among the first few. I'm not sure about the rank. It must be among the first few, because this, first of all, let us see the prostitution, the sex, this thing. It is the oldest profession in the face of the globe. We know it's not difficult to wipe away, but then people forced to enter into this trade, children forced to enter in this trade. This is a phenomena worldwide. Now, developed countries like US, like Western Europe, they have stringent laws, they have the political will to combat this. But then there are countries which are unable to sort of have proper laws. Now, I don't know whether I should say it or not, I should share it or not. We have seen news of our lawmakers watching videos even in the parliaments, in the state legislature with these obscene things. So the mindset has to be changed. First and foremost, at the ground level, the mindset has to change. Say regarding child labor, what is the typical Indian mindset regarding child labor? Chalta hai. You know, even domestic help in the form of child labor is rampant and common. This is the typical Indian mindset. Now we'll have to come out of this mindset. We'll have to think of providing ample opportunities to the children to go to school, to have their education up to a minimum age. We have the laws. We have the compulsory free primary education in Article 21A. But has it been implemented? Is there any political will to implement these things? That is the reason.
Sir, there is another question
Yes.
from one of our students who wants to know why there is a huge difference between the data given by ILO and given by NCR.
Obviously, the international data and the data by the government, by the national agency, often differ because the government is very conservative about its data. And the ILO, it is an international organization, their data is more, as a researcher, the data of the international organization like ILO or UNO, they are more credible than the NCRB data. That I can say.
Sir, there is another question is like how to spread awareness in the high school level, like what are the things that we can do to spread awareness in the high school level, especially in such conservative country like India?
Yes, it is a very big challenge, but then sex education became a part of our curriculum. Like that, human trafficking should also be a part of, at least for some, say for a few months or a few weeks, it should be a part of the curriculum of the high school. Because we need to create awareness about this menace at the senior school level. Because creating awareness is the first step, and that solves many of the problems.
So we don't have any more questions because your session was very comprehensive and exhaustive. Like we got so many data. I will say.
But there'll be brainstorming over the next days. I know it's a certificate course, so experts will be coming and you'll have brainstorming. I just gave the outline, so the participants, they will be enriched, I'm sure. And thank you for giving me the opportunity, Piali, and the IGEM and the KPLI team.
Thank you, sir. It is our pleasure that you agreed to take this session for us. It is really very informative.
But there is a good question. Somebody is saying about the illiterate girl. Somebody is saying what about the illiterate girl?
What will be about the illiterate and poor female and girl?
Yes. Now, this will be, or this should be taken care of by the society at large in the form of the initiatives of NGOs like IGEM, because they really work in the interiors. People who cannot afford to go to school, the NGOs are reaching those places. And people like you who has put the question, it is your job also to create awareness as an educated Indian citizen, where these people are not exposed to the information. So we'll have to cover everyone. Is that clear? Thank you so much.
Thank you, sir. So thank you for joining. And we will end our session. We will keep the session on for some time because the participants will be filling up the feedback form.
Okay.
Thank you, sir. Thank you so much.
So I may leave now.
Yes, sir. Yes.
Okay.
Thank you, sir.
Thank you so much. Thank you, Shubhalakshmi. Thank you.
Thank you, sir.
So those who have still have not done the feedback form, please click on that link. We'll get the feedback form. That is important for you to get the e-certificate. And please keep this in mind that in every session, after the end of the session, we will give you this link where you have to fill up the feedback form in order to get the certificate.
Students, those who have submitted the feedback form, you can leave now. And those who haven't, please fill up the feedback form soon. Students, please, you are requested to fill up the feedback form soon. And as soon as this is done, please leave the meeting. Otherwise, we are not getting an idea. Who haven't filled up the feedback form, please fill up the feedback form soon and leave the meeting. I'm seeing 17 students are still there in the meeting. Have you filled up the feedback form? Students, you are once again requested. Those who haven't filled the feedback form, do it immediately. We are going to close it by 8:20. No one will be entertained later. Partho Ghosh, Soumitra Mohan, Palak Jaswal, Poonam Das, Prabhat Das, Shorbani Das, Tanushree Mondol, please, if you haven't filled up the feedback form, do it immediately. We are going to close it. Just 1 minute left. So, ma'am, today up to this, now we can leave.
Yes, yes, ma'am.
Yes, those who haven't done, we are not going to entertain them anymore. Okay.
Okay, ma'am. We will, yes, we will close right now. So, yes, now I think they must have submitted, because I have seen name of Tanushree Mondal saying that she has submitted, but somehow she's not being able to give.
Okay.
So yeah, so just let the 8:20 get over, then we have to stop this, because we cannot
Okay.
carry on longer time.
Okay, no issue. I can just see that 6 students are still there. I don't know why they are not leaving. So, at what we could do, should we keep a screenshot of this? Is it required?
For you, you can take a screenshot to check with them. That's
Okay, I'm just keeping a screenshot for this. Okay.
Okay, Sani, now this is the time when we will close. So thank you for all your availability. So you please close the session.
Same here. Thank you, ma'am. Thank you to your entire team. Hope to see you.
Yes, ma'am. Yes.
Okay. Thank you, ma'am. And good night.
Bye.
Good night.
Good night.
Good night.